Today I would like to demo how to use IAM role to restrict API calls from specific IP address to the AWS Management Console. The goal is to set up SAML federated roles with multi-factor authentication. The SAML role is used as an entry point and does not have any access, but to assume another role while passing session token for ABAC control. The second level role assumed will check for source IP the SAML role assigned in from. If the source IP is within allowed CEDAR block, the assumed role is successful and user will be able to perform assigned tasks on ABAC controlled resources. As you might know and ask, Okta also has IP addresses verification, so why bother with SAML source IP control? This is to prevent the possibility of SAML response screen scraping. With AWS source IP check after authentication, hacker will not be able to gain any access, even if the SAML response was compromised. Again, the setup will be demoed at the end of the video, so the non-hands-on audience do not have to suffer through the very dry setup process. Here we go. Now on the screen, I'm demonstrating the role that I will be using for SAML authentication. The first role is Team Red, and the only action this role has is view only access plus the assume role action, tag session, and set source identity. And the role it allows to assume is the Team ABAC role. The Team ABAC role is the one with all the good permissions, which is the ABAC S3 policy, which I will be using for a quick demo. And the trust policy is trusting Team Red and Team White roles. So Team White has exactly the same access assigned, which is role view only access and tag session policy, and it also can assume Team ABAC role. Both of these roles trust the SAML provider that's set up in this account. So this is Team Red and this is Team White. Okay, so now let's start. So first I'm going to sign on as my red team. And here's the first level of authentication, which is set up on Okta. Okta is going to send me a verification push. So after I click, yes, it's me on my phone, now I'm signed into AWS console. So if I look at the S3 bucket right now as Team Red without assuming any roles, you can see that I have insufficient permissions on everything. So I will not be able to do anything with Team Red bucket, although I'm signed in as Team Red. So I'm going to try to delete this file. I'm going to type delete. And I get you do not have permission to the bucket versioning setting. And I am not able to delete the object. So now I'm going to switch over to Team ABAC role, which I am successful. Now if I go back to red bucket and I try to delete this object, as you can see, now I can successfully delete the object because I have assumed into a role that has ABAC control. So now if I go back to my bucket list, and if I go to my white bucket, and I try to delete anything in white bucket, again, the delete failed because I'm signed in with a tag that's red, not white. So I cannot touch anything that's in white bucket. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with white team. So now I'm going to sign on as white team. And it will also send me an authentication request. So now, after I confirm it from my phone, now I'm signed in as Team White, as you can see. So if I look at my S3 bucket again, now remember the entry point role, which is Team White, does not have any access. So it must assume another role to perform any task. So now, even though I'm signed in as Team White, if I try to delete this object, it will still fail, as you can see, because Team White does not have any access. So it needs to assume team role, Team ABAC, which is the exact same role that I just used Team Red to assume. But because the tag that came in is red, now the tag is changed to white. So now I'm able to delete anything in white bucket. As you can see, this time it's successful because I'm assumed into Team ABAC role. So now if I go try to upload anything into Team Red, it will fail. But I'm sure you're already expecting it. Okay, so I'm going to close out of this. Now I'm going to go back to the Team White. And I am going to demonstrate the trust relationship of Team ABAC. And here is where I set myself to trust my source IP, because right now, if I look up my IP address, this is my current assigned IP address. So I set it to trusting only one IP address. Now I'm going to change it to 251. And I'm going to try to assume the role again. Now the assume role failed. I'm no longer able to assume the role. Same thing with Team Red access. So if I sign out from here, and now I'm going to try to sign in as Red again. But because I have modified my trust IP address from my Team ABAC role, it doesn't matter if I'm able to authenticate through Okta. I am still not able to do anything because now I no longer have the capability of assuming the Team ABAC role. So this concludes. Now I'm going to change my trust relationship back to the correct IP address that I'm in right now, which is showing right here. So I'm going to update trust policy. you can see source IP. Now, if I try to switch role again, the switch role is successful again. So I will be able to perform any task that the red team needs to do with the red bucket. Of course, it's going to still fail on the white bucket, but since my tag is red, now I'm able to upload anything again into my red bucket. Okay, as you can see, the upload is successful. So now I have completed my demonstration. Now the technical part. So the second level role is team ABAC role. As I said earlier, there is a team red role, which on Okta, here's where I require for multi-factor authentication. That's part of my sign-on policy. And every time I sign out of Okta, if I want to re-sign in, I have to re-authenticate. So in Okta, if I look at the assignment, and if I look at my red team, as I demonstrated in the previous session, that this is the key that goes in with my SAML assertion. And if you look at the team red, again, there's no tag. And the permission is only allowed to, the trust policy is, it trusts the Okta authentication, IDP. And I allow it to tag team and log in. So I can use it as my ABAC control. Same thing with team white. The access is very simple. I only allow it to assume another role, which is the team ABAC role. And I allow it to tag session and set source identity. And the trust is very simple. Trust is also just the Okta IDP. And it allows to tag session, which is the team and login. Now the trick is on the team ABAC trust policy. Now team ABAC is assigned all of the necessary actions, permissions for S3 or SSM or EC2 or CloudFormation. And it's assigned view-only access, so I can navigate around the console. Now the trust policy is a little more complicated because I want to also use this role for my previous setup. So this role also trusts Okta, but I have added the very bottom two section to allow to trust role team red and team white to assume this role and set source ID. And I also set a deny policy that says it's denying these two roles to assume role if the role is not from IP address as follow. So that's how you can control the source IP address check. And that concludes my demo today. Thank you for watching.